Blockbuster quarterback moves. You see the haul going the other way. Jared Goff is now a Lion, and they get 2 first-rounders and a number 3 as well. Going to get the reaction of one of our favorite and biggest Lions fans in just a moment. But I'm going to go back to Adam Schefter, because one of the things we've been talking about here this morning is what, if any, impact all this has on Deshaun Watson. The Deshaun Watson trade continues to be the biggest thing hovering over the sport. Schefter, I had to cut you off earlier because I had to go to a break. I never want to do that. Pick it up from there. Where were you headed on Deshaun Watson?
Well, Greeny, we were talking about what the value for Deshaun Watson would be in light of what the Lions got back from Matthre Stafford. And what I would say on Deshaun Watson is you can let your imagination run wild, and you can come up with even more teams being interested in him than you would even imagine. And think about it this way. What team outside of Kansas City, Buffalo, Green Bay wouldn't make a run at the Houston Texans and Deshaun Watson? You could even come up with the scenario where would it be worth it for the Houston Texans to trade Deshaun Watson in the division to the Jacksonville Jaguars for the number 1 overall pick for Trevor Lawrence? Now, that has not happened, but that's a hypothetical, the likes of which you could begin to wonder about. Would that be worth it? Would the Jaguars be willing to do that? I would say probably. Would the Texans be willing to do that? Maybe, if they could ever come around to the idea that they might have to trade Deshaun Watson, which is a spot they're not in today. But you can go through scenarios like that and wonder that with almost any team in the league, because that's how good Deshaun Watson is.
Absolutely. And the one thing that has happened, and Mike Tannenbaum made this point earlier, though, is that with each move, that would, we assume, eliminate candidates. So the market starts to be driven down ever so slightly when the Rams make the move for Matthre Stafford, and they've got their quarterback situation set up. So let's see how quickly the Texans feel obligated to move. Meanwhile, I want to bring in everyone's favorite Detroit Lions fan. No one loves the Lions. Go ahead, Jalen. Today, let me hear the roar.
Okay. We making moves, baby.
Oh, you are making moves, Jalen. There's no doubt about that. You're making moves.
Is it a roar of joy? How do you feel about Jared Goff, a 3 and 2 number 1s for your franchise quarterback?
So I'm going to hear between now and when the NFL season starts, a lot of people talking about Matthre Stafford and what they think he's going to bring to a franchise. Take it from the resident Lions fan who's currently in Detroit of what you're going to get. He's a professional. He has a strong arm. He competed for the team even when we were struggling. And Greeny, he never complained. This is like you watching Darrelle Revis go to New England and get a championship ring. That's how I feel for Matthre Stafford. As much as I am a Lions fan, we're dysfunctional, and we've been a terrible organization that have won 1 playoff game for the last 60-plus years. Matthre Stafford has Hall of Fame talent. He was never going to necessarily get into the Hall of Fame playing for the Lions because you got to win in the playoffs, Shefty, to actually be considered. So now that he's a member of the Rams, I am rooting for him. I am rooting for his family. I am wishing him well. But the one thing I will say, when he's in the pocket, Greeny, he's not extremely mobile, and he doesn't have that championship level experience or pedigree. That's the one thing I'm watching for with the Rams. McVay's been there. Aaron Donald's been there. Of course, they added Jalen Ramsey. Let's see if Matthre Stafford's going to be able to perform at an elite level to help them play up to their potential.
So many things I agree with in that, including the fact that the last game, what turns out to be his last game as a Lion, he had 3 different injuries that could have kept him out in what was a completely meaningless game for the team. I believe they were 4-11 at the time. And he went out and played. And that's the kind of guy Matt Stafford was, and that's the quarterback that he was there. But, Shefty, what was the reaction around the league to the deal itself and to what they got in it? Again, Jared Goff going to the Lions, a lot of questions. It's a guy who was the starting quarterback in a Super Bowl 2 years ago this week. What are you hearing around the league about what the Lions got back?
Well, I can tell you this. There were a lot of teams that were very disappointed that they didn't get Matthre Stafford. That I can tell you. Having spoken to a few of them already, they feel like Matthre Stafford and Sean McVay, that's going to be a lethal combination out in L.A. And the Detroit Lions did as well as they possibly could in a trade like this, getting back 2 1s, a 3, and Jared Goff. Now, the reason they got back all that compensation in the former draft picks is because they're taking on Jared Goff's contract and all the guaranteed money in it. But here's the interesting part about Jared Goff's contract. while it's a burden now, in 2 years, the Lions can move on from Jared Goff's contract without any dead cap money at all. So if Jared Goff is, and you would think he would be, in Detroit for the next 2 years, they can get out of that contract in 2 years with no cap charge at all. So while Goff may be something of a financial burden now, he's going to be a financial luxury in a couple of years. But if he plays well and plays the way they want, that becomes a moot point anyway, because then they'll probably wind up doing a new deal.
So, yeah, so it feels like there's low risk and high ceiling. So how do you feel about it? Give me some, Mr. Rostradamus, give me some prediction here. What are the Lions going to be with Jared Goff as their quarterback for the next couple of years?
I'm a true diehard Lions fan, and I'm not going to act like adding Jared Goff is not going to get us our first Super Bowl. That ain't happening. However, there may be a chance, as you guys mentioned, getting a quarterback in his mid-20s who also played for the GM now with the Lions while he was with the Rams, which means that he probably has a lot of confidence in Jared, who's basically been disrespected by his former team. And this is the irrational confidence that comes from a player, Greeny. Right now, Jared Goff is like, wait a minute, Sean McVay gonna try to diss me? The general manager gonna act like I'm not gonna be back? I helped take this team to the Super Bowl. So now that he's a member of the Lions, he's going to have something to prove. As you mentioned, the Lions now have flexibility. We can see what he's about. And we haven't had many great quarterbacks in the history of the franchise. As a matter of fact, Greeny and Schefter, y'all will appreciate this. Matthre Stafford is the greatest quarterback in the history of the Lions.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He is. Bobby Lane went to his high school, and he was original. Now it's Matthre Stafford. I've seen Eric Hipple, Gary Danielson, Kramer, my brother Rodney Peete, Andre Ware, older Dante Culpepper. The list goes on and on and on. Joey Harrington. And so when he becomes the Lions quarterback, he don't have enormous shoes to fill, but he does have an opportunity to reinvent himself in Detroit. We're going to be cheering for you, Jared Goff. We're going to represent for the team. And how about the first-round picks, Greedy? How about the first-round picks? We get first-round picks every year, and I'm looking. I'm playing double dutch. I'm like, okay, last year, let's get a quarterback. And I like Jeff Okudah, but he's not a quarterback. And so now, a year later, we're trying to do it. Hopefully, the Lions are now moving in the right direction.
And so, Schefter, just quickly, 16 months ago, the Rams made Jared Goff the richest player in NFL history. At that point, he had the biggest contract of all time. How does that happen? 16 months later, how is that player traded?
He regressed in the eyes of the Rams and did not turn into the player that he did. 16 months ago, people bought stocks that they thought would go up that didn't. And the Jared Goff stock went the other way on the Rams. They didn't see the progress that they wanted. They didn't see the motivation that they wanted. And they felt like they had to move on. Look, we saw it happen. And we saw it unfold in the playoff game when they went with John Wolford, when they could have gone with Jared Goff. And they chose Wolford at that time. That told you where this was going. And conversely, Detroit can take on Jared Goff, and they can do it also because guess what? Dan Campbell, the new head coach in Detroit, got a 6-year contract. So this is not going to be built in one offseason with one trade. But they can begin to assemble pieces and parts like Jared Goff, and that doesn't mean that they won't stop looking for a quarterback. But right now they've got a bridge, a placeholder, and they're hoping that he can be a lot more than that and prove he's worth the #1 pick that he once was, which is why this is the first time in NFL history we've ever seen 2 #1 picks ever traded for each other in one trade. Never happened in the common draft era until Saturday night.
Well, Jalen Rose will be rooting for Stafford. We will be rooting for you, and a happy belated birthday to my brother, Jalen Rose. Thank you very much. I got to take a break. Much more to do as we continue here. In a moment, I will tell you why the Stafford deal puts the Rams into some rarefied air. We'll see if the crew agrees as we play Prisoner of the Moment next.
Still your best friend, and now your co-pilot. Still a father, but now a friend. Still an electric car, just more electrifying. Still a night out, but everything fits in. Still hard work, just a little easier. Still a legend, just more legendary. Chevrolet, making life's journey